Hey, everybody, it's Kevin and Marina. We're so excited to have you. We're talking about something that's interesting because I know that going out in nature is a blast and being able to be with plants is wonderful and just good for the soul. But it's interesting when you actually start looking at what plants you're seeing and don't just see a blank canvas of green or yellow. And I think it can really help us appreciate nature, but can also help us appreciate herbalism. Marina's going to go more into that in just a second, and you'll learn more about plant identification and really being able to take full advantage of all the things that we're given. Talk to you soon. Marina, it's so good to see you. And I feel like the hecticness of life pops up on us. And you and I talking about foraging in nature is really making me go, I'm going to go take a walk after we're done with the show out in the forest just to be able to enjoy it and take a deep breath. But today you got to tell me, here's a way you can do it, Kevin, in a whole new light and educate me all about these exciting things. One thing I did want to celebrate, Marina has a wonderful podcast that I want you guys all to check out. And then make sure you head over to Marina's channel on our PHLI, the Herbalism channel, and join us there too for the conversations. But Marina, off to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Kevin. So anybody interested in herbalism or how to incorporate or pivot from what you're actually doing to more holistic and natural modalities, please check out the Holistic Pharmacy podcast, where I interview so many wonderful guests that will tell you how their journey unfolded and hopefully inspire you to what is possible. And even if you don't see anything out there that you like, it will inspire you to carve your own path forward because these other individuals have done it. So that is my mission. And today I would love to talk about how this nice spring weather, we can uncover all sorts of nice flowers, plants, and other goodies that are sometimes edible, sometimes medicinal, and sometimes it's important to be aware of our native poisonous species as well so that we don't come into contact with those.
Oh, awesome. I love this time of year, Marina. Like, I love the green. We have crocuses coming up that Savannah planted outside, and a few of the wild flowers. They're still waiting and hibernating and coming here sometime soon in Spokane. It's a little cold, but it's so beautiful. It's so nice to be outside right now. So, how can we enjoy that to a whole nother level?
Yes. So what I like to do, and every day is different, right? That's the cool thing about nature is you walk outside, as we were saying. Probably after this talk, I will also be going outside. And every day things are different and things are shifting, and it's not as fast paced as real life, where technology is literally at the split of a second, right? Fighting for our attention. But it has its own rhythm, and we can see how these flowers, these leaves are changing every day, and from day to day you can notice small increments, but then from week to week it's completely different. Like some trees were just flowering, and all of a sudden now I see the seeds everywhere. All the seed pods are already on the floor. The baby mugworts are starting to grow big, and the baby resveratrol rich Japanese knotweeds that I have everywhere in my area, they're going to be like, tens of feet tall potentially later in the season, and right now they're just little seedlings. So really gives us a chance to observe how nature grows and regenerates, and even on disturbed soils, there's still this resilience that it just keeps on coming back and taking care of our planet.
I love that. We were just talking the other night. I was talking to some Native American groups, and a lot of like tribes will have their own gardens. They're growing a lot of their medicinal plants in those areas and just fresh fruits and vegetables to have for the given area. And it's neat that we have the ability to take those things, cultivate them, and then harvest them, from a given area and defined area. But I think it's even more fun to be able to walk out into nature. So one thing I remember, like gathering huckleberries, was a big thing for my tribe, or root digging, another big thing for us to be able to go and do. And then Gary Ferguson, one of the folks that's on the Native American cohort with me, he's done a lot of things with students to teach them to go out and actually make salves and other kind of medicinal properties with things that are, native to our areas. And I tell you what, it makes it different to go outside, Marina. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the plant you mentioned, right? Crocus, there's a species that inspired one of our drugs for Alzheimer's, the galantamine type of drugs. which is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. So
Hmm.
it's very interesting that you can almost always, and especially with the older drugs, trace it back to something in nature. So the study of pharmacognosy, I think, is really important. And we can also use the whole plants, which is my whole message. And that is just to give us more choices and options. Sometimes a drug is necessary, sometimes it's the cure. But it's nice to have other options and alternative. And now we're seeing so many supply chain issues, and during COVID as well. And we're also seeing that the terrain is so important, because we had the germ versus terrain theory, and the whole backbone of modern science and medicine is that the germ is the problem, right? But also we are composed of a huge microbiome with lots of germs and bacteria and viruses and fungi even. So we have all types of cells going on, right? And there's some debate about how many versus human cells that we are actually composed on, and who's hosting who. uh, the point is that there's this balance and harmony that all of these species create, and within these symbiotic relationships, there can be a resilience, just like in the plants, but there can also be weaknesses, right, or disturbances. So that's when we see that, okay, if a certain opportunistic pathogen or a virus comes in to an already disturbed situation, that's when it wreaks havoc. And that's why some people suffered greatly from COVID and other people did better, because the person matters, just like we spoke last week about energetics.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is, Savannah, my wife, being a wildlife biologist, when a fire comes through and burns everything off, Marina, like unfortunately, the things that grow back first, usually noxious. Something that is there that shouldn't be there. It's not a natural kind of process to be able to come back, because as you mentioned, it's a slow growing kind of filtering process that nature allows to have. But when you go out and you're looking for things, we can start on either end of the spectrum. Either we can look at the conservation environmental side, or we can look at the safety side. Let's start safety, just for fun and to make sure people are keeping themselves safe. If we're going out and trying to say, I want to be able to identify the plants that I can use in herbalism, and also make sure that I'm not finding or grabbing hold of or consuming plants that are dangerous. How do we do that, Marina? How do we start with that?
Yes, absolutely. So, my favorite thing to do is to really focus in on the local species that are likely to be found in your area. And so, there's all sorts of field guides that I would refer you to that are going to outline what you're likely to find around you, because everything is regional and specific to where you are. And that's the whole premise, that we can actually find medicine and even some toxins too around where we are. So it's important to be aware. First thing I actually do when I travel is ask, okay, is there anything to watch out here in terms of both plants or wildlife and animals too? Like, what is a danger that I need to avoid, so that I'm not touching it, I'm not disturbing it, I'm not perceived as a threat by these things. So it's very important for that relationship and the harmony with the outside world to understand, and to respect. It's a sign of respect too, that, okay, this plant does not want to be touched. And if it is touched, it's going to harm me, because it has its own defense mechanism. And that's really the whole thing. Everybody's just trying to survive.
Yep.
So in my area, for example, I know there's poison ivy, I know there's poison oak, and potentially some other poison species. So I know to watch out and not even touch them, right?
Mhm.
Because they are lipophilic, and they have like these oils on the surface that are going to come into contact with my skin and cause a delayed type hypersensitivity reaction. So I want to make sure I'm not touching any, poison oak or poison ivy. So leaves of three, let them be, is what we say. And it's amazing how it can camouflage, right? Because it could just be among other wild plants. So you do really have to pay attention. And I can't tell you how many times, just because I'm aware, because I was trained as an herbalist, I notice things that I'm like, oh, no, we shouldn't touch it, and we shouldn't walk there barefoot because of these reasons. And other people would never even think to.
Yeah.
So it is important to just be aware, and then it just makes you more observant and more intentional and mindful.
No, I think that's so in our area we have a lot of stinging nettle, and that's the same thing, like going down to the We call it crick where we're from. Some people call it creek. It's wrong, but but when we went down to the water, that was one thing always look out for and be mindful of. When you're coming up onto the shore or the bank, to make sure that you're not toweling off over where there's stinging nettle, and to appreciate, kind of the issues you may run into. Same kind of thought process, Marina, when we're looking for things that we do want to encounter, just having a better recognition of those things. How do you go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the first step is always to anything, solving any problem is just awareness. So you do just want to be aware. And then once you know like whether or not it's safe to go ahead and discover and explore further, if you've identified that it's not poison ivy or it's not anything, poisonous that's common in your area, and you do want to kind of get to know those other plants, then you can use your five senses, right, to observe and see the texture and, smell the plant. I would not advise eating something you don't know. Definitely do not advise that unless you're 100% sure. But even if you know it is edible or medicinal, even, you also have to be aware that it's not sprayed with something, that it doesn't have noxious gases from the roadside and all of the toxins that are in our environment, unfortunately. So regarding eating, I would definitely be cautious. And that's why foraging is important to understand, like the location from which you're foraging. Is it a safe and clean environment? Because
Yeah.
if it's not, actually these weedy type of plants that are a lot of times medicinal, they will absorb all the toxins of that disturbed soil and they will process it, and they're actually healing the soil and the earth. But then if we consume them, then we get kind of like the more concentrated toxicity that plant is trying to eradicate.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we want to just be mindful of. But if we are going into like a woodland or other undisturbed, where humans are not going ahead and spraying things or, otherwise putting waste products in the soils, then it does become a question of whether or not this is a endangered species, perhaps. So you want to become aware of that as well and understand, first of all, is it endangered? Second of all, is there a lot of this plant around, or there's a little? And you never want to harvest everything. You always want to leave some so it could continue to populate and regenerate itself. And then there's all those tools that I mentioned in terms of actually identifying. So the field guides, right? And then nowadays it's fancy to get apps. So there are some apps out there where you could just point your phone, right? Take a picture of something and identify. But the problem is that a lot of times that's not an accurate way. So I would still say the field guides are way more accurate, especially if you're going by geography and your location to see like what this could be. And so if you are using an app, what I like to do is to use keywords. So not only by what the app perceives, with a camera, but this is why I pulled up these two specific apps. So the iNaturalist and the PlantNet is the next one. What you could do is actually put in the keywords of the botanical description of what you're observing of the plant. So the first thing that you want to ask is it a tree? Is it a shrub? Is it an herb? Is it a flower? Right? So you kind of want to identify like where to start looking. And there are some crossover between trees and shrubs in that they're woody, and then the trees are taller and the shrubs are usually multi-stemmed and shorter. Then you want to ask, is it an herb that's not woody, so it's just low growing to the ground? And then is it a flowering herb? Because we can also identify by the flowers. So there's a whole separate way where you can identify wild flowers. So you might want to get the specific field guides for what you're trying to forage or look for. And so once you identify that, then you can use the appropriate field guide or type it into this app, and it will give you a much more surefire way. And even if you type it into Google, if you're using the right botanical terms, it might give you a much more accurate thing than just snapping a picture of it. And if you want to pull up that third glossary that I gave you, it is a wonderful resource that I just recently discovered for myself, even though I have other resources. But It's a quick guide on what these things actually look like. So you want to, let's say there are flowers, there's ways to describe the flowers and count how many petals there are and how the leaves are growing around, what's the pattern of the growth, and how tall is the flower. So all those things you can type in as botanical keywords. You can also observe, if you can't see, let's say, the root, you can describe the root. If you can see the leaves, you describe how are the leaves growing, how are they arranged? Is it a simple leaf or a compound leaf? Is it an evergreen? So there's kind of all these terms that once you get familiar with the terms, then it becomes very easy to observe just using the visual sense, as I was saying, and get pretty close of an idea, just typing in that information to what plant it could be. And then sometimes you can, use other senses. So like you can touch the texture to understand what the leaf is. Of course, if it's not poisonous, as we discussed, or, it's not going to sting you, because nettles is not really poisonous, but it is going to hurt if you touch it. So you might just not, want to do that. You might want to wear gloves in that case. But nettles is one of my favorite plants, and I'm sure many herbalists would tell you the same thing. You just have to cook it and not eat it raw. Anyhow, so what we want to do is identify what it is, and then we could see if we want to play more with it. So if we want to smell it or crush up the leaf, and might have essential oils that we can detect. And then if we are sure, it's clean, it's safe, it's edible, you could even taste it and things like that. But definitely warn you, do not taste anything that you're not sure about, and probably don't taste any berries because there could be some nightshade and anticholinergic things in there.
I love that you do the botanical terms, because that's one difficult thing. It's just like learning any new language. When you're looking at a key, like a key guide, it's a lot like, for everybody in healthcare, an algorithm, that you're really trying to decide, is it this or is it this? And then it'll help you kind of flow down which pathway you should go. And understanding those key terms and utilizing a reference like Marina shared with us there in that conservationresearchinstitute.org form is so helpful for you to understand what those are, and then give some pictures and identifications of what they are and how they look. I do think that seeing them in various like forms and formats will also help you seeing something live rather than the like the drawn out picture, so you can see those in nature. Do you know, Marina, are there opportunities in your area for you to go out and take any of these like types of courses when someone walks through and helps you identify plants for the first time?
Absolutely. So these are literally called plant walks, and many herbalists and botanists in your area would probably offer them. So either check with your local botanical garden, or if you have an herbalist store or guild of some sort, or even like a local park, they might point you into the right direction, or even a college, right? A university that offers botany.
Yep. I think that all of those are fantastic options. I know that Fish and Wildlife in your area is also another good resource to be able to help folks to be able to understand, where they can find certain things and how they can understand how to utilize them safely. So lots of great resources out there. And I think that's a great one, because Marina is providing a ton of great stuff for you to be able to look through. But Marina has years and years of experience of identifying them herself. And you be able to walk hand in hand with someone is fantastic. One person great to walk hand in hand with is Marina. So if you have the ability to jump on over to RPH Ally, join us there and join the conversation. If you have questions, conversational pieces on things that you've went out and foraged previously, or things along those lines to learn from Marina, I'd love to be able to hear from you in your local areas. I think every area offers something different and unique, and so that's always a fun part of the conversation, especially when we can tie it into how are we going to help patients and improve kind of patient care and the healthcare realm of what we're personally focused on, and to help you guys in general of being able to appreciate nature, which I know Marie and I are both going to take advantage of here soon.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. So lastly, I just want to say that you don't have to be an expert, but you do just need curiosity and just using those right keys and guides to make sure that it's safe. And again, just use the power of nature. And even if you're not going to be eating any of these, it's just so fun to see what's around you, and just support wildlife, gain and appreciation, so that you can join into the conservation of nature efforts, and you can share with your kids. And it's really fun because as a citizen of the earth, this is available to you.
It totally changes the way that we drive down the road, Marina. Like when you start seeing plants as something special and unique, it's really a wonderful feeling to be driving around and see those kinds of things and appreciate them. So I'm so glad that you highlighted that today.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Kevin. I look forward to next week.
All right, everybody, have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.